This episode is brought to you by Bleacher Report. How do you follow sports? From college football to the NBA, Bleacher Report brings you the latest news, live scores, and epic highlights from your favorite leagues, teams, and athletes, all in one app. Dive into exclusive shows hosted by your favorite athletes and original Bleacher Report series with breaking news, rumors, and predictions all season long. Download Bleacher Report to personalize your coverage.
I've got a lot of grandbabies, like a lot. And when it comes to finding a gift for each of them, it could add up. But this year, while I was making my way through Walmart, I realized I don't have to spend a lot to get the gifts they'll love.
An OPI mini mani set. I'm gonna do so much nail art.
Oh, yeah! A Lego set! Might own a Walla water bottle!
Ooh, and that's just half of them.
Shop great gifts they're sure to love for $25 and under at Walmart.
As we wind down 2024, we'll be taking a look back at the best and favorite episodes of 2024. Today we start with one from the Passing Lab series with host Josh Herring. The guest in this one is Caleb Corrill, now the offensive coordinator at St. Thomas in Minnesota. We're excited to announce a new series that Caleb will be hosting called Student of the Game. I've been able to get to know Caleb well over the last year, and among many things that I've been impressed with is in the way in which he learns the game. From our conversations, the idea behind this series was born. Here's how Caleb describes the series. Student of the Game comes from the mindset that decrees we will be genuinely curious, constantly evolving, and obsessed with the process of growing and learning. This podcast offers a source for those who believe in constant evolution of their knowledge, craft, and intrigue in the game of football. Look for Student of the Game with Caleb Corrill to launch in January of 2025. Here's a conversation I know I loved, and from your feedback you did too. Coach Herring has been doing a great job in this series, and we look forward to having the Passing Lab back for Season 3 in May of 2025.
Everything I was calling was getting matched out. We were running the stick and the wide cross, and we were doing the verts and everything. We could not create separation, and it wasn't the player's fault. I'm talking about getting matched out. So I knew then there was something that I had to figure out. And so that's when all of this stuff started to brew, and it's like, okay, we've got to try something different.
We're back for Season 2 of the Passing Lab with our host, Josh Herring. And I think this is going to be another exciting summer, some great episodes. And Josh, you kick it off with a very strong right here in Caleb Corrill, who we've had on the podcast before. He was the Hanson Ratings Offensive Coordinator of the Year, has done an outstanding job, averaging over 460 yards and 40 points over a 6-year span. And that earned him the opportunity to be an offensive coordinator at the FCS level at St. Thomas. So I think he's a guy we're going to expect a whole heck of a lot more out of here in the future, but we're excited to have him back here on our first Passing Lab. So again, thanks for doing this, Josh. And what do you have to say here about our first guest?
Yeah, Caleb's awesome. If you're into some really deep technical X's and O's, this is the episode for you. He does a really just a tremendous job of going over kind of the 3 staple option routes they have in their offense. And Keith, like you said, I think, I even say in the episode, I think Caleb's ceiling is sky high. And if you just look at what he's accomplished so far and how hard he works and goes after trying to be better, he's going to do some really big things in the game. Yeah,
and he's a guy who's not afraid to go and learn, not just from levels above him, but even down to the high school level. I mean, he seeks out great football minds, and he goes and he talks to them, and he's always open to learning and sharing.
Yes, that is super impressive. If you've kind of been around as long as we have and coaching this thing, that is, I don't want to say it's rare, but you definitely don't find that with everyone. So it's pretty special.
So here's our first episode of Passing Lab Season 2 with Caleb Corrill, offensive coordinator at St. Thomas.
Did you know Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company? They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just quarterback Peyton Manning, I'm also meditating Manning. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when your holiday checklist is complete. When you give them the coziest scuba matching set, you both get moments like this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to find last-minute gifts that bring presents. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
All right, guys, want to welcome you back to the Passing Lab. Got another great season coming up this year. This episode, I cannot tell you guys how excited I am, not just because of the quality of our speaker, but me and him, we line up a lot philosophically. So it is always fun to talk to a guy who I know has some of the same ideas about the passing game as I do. This is going to be a really good one. So today's guest is the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at the University of St. Thomas, Caleb Corrill. You guys may have heard him on a really big episode of Coach and Coordinator with Coach Grabowski that had just a ton of hits and people listening and getting excited about the stuff he does offensively. So this one is going to be good. We've got a lot to go over. There's going to be a lot of content, so get your notebooks ready. If some of you guys may or may not know, from high school to the college to the NFL level, the cool kids are running option routes. That's the place to be. And a lot of guys are scared of this. It's something I've been a fan of for a long time, and Caleb's as good at this stuff as anybody, so we're really going to hone in on a lot of that. But, Coach, great to have you. Super excited about this. Just thanks for being here, man.
Honored to be on here. Like we were talking about before, I'm a fan of the show and this series as much as I am anything else. So just being able to be a part of this, and I know you and I had a heck of a deep dive last summer where we got to finally link up and talk about this stuff. But yeah, definitely I'm excited to hopefully break down some barriers on this option route stuff. It's probably been for me, I know it's been even longer for you, for about 5 years where I've been just begging people to do this. Like, you got to add this to what you do. So finally, now we get a platform where we can really dive into why and how we get this thing accomplished.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So let's jump in real quick just to give guys some background on you. And for those of you guys that don't know, Coach Corrill was the Hansen Ratings named him the top D3 offensive coordinator in America. He scored right at 50 points a game over the last 2 years. I don't care what level you're at. If you're scoring half 100 points, that is elite. So look him up. His stats are unbelievable. I'll take up 15 minutes of the show just reading stats to you guys. We want to get into the ball talk, but this is really good stuff. So as background wise, talk about kind of your influences. You are kind of like I am, far flung in all these different things you kind of have taken from and guys you've stolen from and learned from. So kind of just walk us through a little bit of the influences you've had in learning the passing game.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I think like a lot of us, I started in the air raid mindset where I did the certification and Hal Mumby and AJ and watching all Leach's tapes. And so I started in there in the first couple of years. And we'll kind of get into it when we get to the journey of the option routes. But I started to see a necessity for just some different applications of concepts. So honestly, when I was going through this, I think the 4 biggest pass game influences that we have had when we were at Mount St. Joe, number one, Sean McVay. Right. So we're big on the Rams tape. We started that in 2017, 2018 by reading Bobby Peters' books and then really just trying to steal as many cuts off of YouTube that we could of just seeing what they were doing and then kind of folding into that. Bill O'Brien, Josh McDaniels with Patriots and the Raiders, and Sean Payton. And I know the NFL game certainly differs greatly from college, but honestly, a lot of this pass game stuff that we really dug into came from those guys. And I'll tell you what, one of the best resources that we found to like try to uncover this, there's on YouTube, you find those cut-ups of Cooper Kupp and all his targets. And we would just sit there and watch those and like see what they were doing. And I'll tell you what, the Rams really opened their eyes to it. And I think where that really broke open, Coach, is being from Cincinnati is when the Rams played the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And right. Cincinnatians, obviously, they had the right to be pretty excited. And I was excited too, but I was being a football nerd watching that game. And I'm watching the Rams work these condensed splits and these option routes in the biggest game in the sport. So really just dug into that. And I think, the college guys, obviously, anything off the Bryles tree, Lane Kiffin, we mentioned Leach, Lincoln Riley. I really like Gundy and Sark. I think they blend. I think Gundy does a great job of simplicity becoming sophisticated offense, and Sark has obviously NFL background too. So a lot of those, and one name I want to throw in there that if you're listening to this, you like creative and effective passing game. One name that everybody needs to know is Pete Sturbick at Colorado School of the Mines, back-to-back runners up at the Division II level. I've had the honor of talking with him. Fantastic operation. He's really big into the bunch world. He does a great job of dressing things up, and he's got a really, really creative mind. He's an artistic mind that gets it done. I believe his quarterback over the last couple of years, if there's a guy that outdid our quarterback at Mount St. Joe, is his guy who's in the camp with Sean Payton right now. So that's definitely one. And then I wanted to add here, off of that NFL and college tree, is resources that I think if you're listening to this, you got to have all four of these. Number one, Dub Maddox. All right. Got the books and the process. Dan Gonzalez of just understanding how to partner concepts together. Andrew Coverdale, go back to the original Bunch book. He's been on your podcast. You talk about all the things that he uncovered well before it became in vogue, and learning really how to break the defense's rules. And I'm not just saying it because I'm on here, but you got the option book you sent me. And when I really went down this rabbit hole, I tried to look up every single resource that I could that you put out there, and have learned quite a bit from there. So that would kind of be that sphere of influence that I have, I believe.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll send you the Venmo payment for putting my name on there as soon as the show's over. No, seriously, I really appreciate that. One thing I want to say, like, before we move on, one of the things that I think inspires me, like, about you, and I think there's this general consensus that a lot of high school coaches feel like college coaches, well, A, that they're not going to talk to high school coaches, and you just named a bunch of high school coaches. But more importantly than that, your journey has been about trying to find stuff and finding the best stuff that you can and finding ways to apply it to your program. And I think a lot of people feel like if you're a college offensive coordinator, well, some guy is your mentor, you probably GA'd for that guy, and that's the system you know, and that's what you do. And the best guys in football, no matter what level it is right now, are stealing from people, whether it's Andy Reid, looking at college and high school film, or you can go all over. But I'm so impressed with just the amount of research and work that you've done, because I know for me, it's been that same sort of journey. You're always trying to look to be better and not deciding that you've got everything figured out. And I just think that's really inspiring. I think young guys can take from that. This always look and try and find new things and adapt from year to year and make whatever. Don't just be complacent with what you have. So kudos to you for that. That's really, really good.
Yeah, I pride myself on just being, I say self-made, but I don't mean that. I taught myself that I'll learn from anybody and everybody. And I try to make sure if someone requests to, like, hey, I saw your stuff online, I'd like to talk to you. That's what Pete Sturbick did to me. He didn't need to do that, but I'll do that with anyone and everyone. And I'm just like you, I'm obsessed with every year trying to add and evolve what I know, because it's the Dub book, right? If the moment you start evolving, you're done. Like, you're going to get caught, and those 40 and 50 point per game seasons, they go down pretty quick because defenses are doing the same thing. So I appreciate you picking up on that, but I think it's really important.
Yeah. So I promise, guys, we're going to get very deep into the nitty gritty of this option stuff, but let's do some background first as far as that goes. So talk about your journey in starting to kind of dip your toe into this stuff. And you're in the deep end now, you're swimming in the ocean, but how did you evolve through from being like, okay, let's start with this one option route or two and kind of work our way to where this becomes a huge part of what we do offensively?
Great question. So as I kind of outlined this going backwards in time, I think the first way it started is not even anything that we're necessarily going to talk about today, but we were in 2017, my first year, at a really good quarterback. And what we just kept falling back to was the smash. We just kept falling back to smash, smash, smash. It was our comfort blanket, both he and I. And what I found in that is we wanted that to become an all-purpose concept. So essentially what we did was we just kind of made up a system that essentially evolved into a slot choice deal where we're going inside fade versus one. We want the corner route versus a traditional quarters look. And then we want to bring a corner post back across the face when they start playing cover two. And then once we realized, the inside fade is awesome versus one, but they're going to press bail to three, we need to be able to post snap in that to the seam. I honestly think that's when I realized that you could do this. And we controlled it. I know a lot of people get nervous about this stuff of not being able to control it, but we controlled it pre-snap. And I think that's where it started. And then as I built it out in 2018, we were a big Y-cross team and we were working a lot of these air raid concepts. We got into a conference championship game essentially. And they were playing this too high quarter stuff where we were just getting slots bracketed all across the field. And I could not figure it out. Like when I go back and watch that film, I'm just embarrassed of myself because everything I was calling was getting matched out. We were running the stick and the wide cross and we were doing the verts and everything. We could not get separation. And it wasn't the player's fault. I'm talking about getting matched out. So I knew then there was something that I had to figure out, and that's what kind of led me into understanding, okay, there's this rise in this quarters match coverage that was on the precipice and has really since kind of taken over. And honestly, in that, not only the quarters coverage, but the match technique of underneath defenders, which our defense at Mount St. Joe, Rick Thompson's the defensive coordinator, is incredible. And he started doing this to us. We were running all the classic shallow stuff, air raid shallow. And we stole it for about 2 weeks in spring ball in 2017, 2018. And I'll tell you what, on the first day of the third week, he started cutting crossers and matching those dig routes. And I'm like, we couldn't complete a pass. And so that's when all of this stuff started to brew. And it's like, okay, we've got to try something different. And that's where kind of the first evolution of what we're going to talk about started to take place in our conversations, just because we're like, we have to find a way to disengage from this match coverage, and traditional stick routes and traditional spot routes are not accomplishing what we need them to accomplish anymore. So that's kind of where it got going, I think.
That's awesome. And kind of, I'm not going to steal any of your time, but like for us, it was the same thing. Where when in Georgia high school football was pretty advanced. I would say it's ahead in a lot of ways of where a lot of the country is and what they do schematically. And so going all the way back to 2012, 2013, 2014, which is when we really started getting deeper into the option routes, match coverage was one of the issues, and not being able to just throw traditional stick and things like that. So exact same journey. I'm totally with you on that. And I think that people, if you're not seeing that, you're going to see that at some point. It's even revolving back around in some places now to where they're going backwards and you're seeing more vision and spot drop and different things mixed in. But you are going to see this stuff. And so my big thing is answers. You've always got to have an answer. And when you don't have that, it's a helpless feeling. And I've been there. So this stuff, it gives you a shot. That's the great thing. Let's dive into it. I think this is one of the first things you really jumped into for us. This is something we looked at a long time ago. So if any of you guys are familiar with like what a lot of people call Hoss juke, it'd be Hoss Y juke or Hoss Z juke, and kind of the Patriots terminology. It's America's greatest empty play of all the greatest. Most people would say we called it Brady just as a one-word call because it made him famous. He's running that 12 times a game in 2007 in the NFL. So you're really good at it. You have a lot of great coaching points. I'm just going to let you kind of go, and I'll ask you questions as we work through it, but kind of just dive into the juke concept for people that may have no idea what we're even talking about.
Absolutely. So the first note on here to kind of say that we've got synchronized thought processes. Where we saw it is there's a great YouTube video. It's like a 3-play sequence. It's when the Patriots played the Rams, and it was that low-scoring Super Bowl, and they went juke 3 times up the field, and I believe they threw it to a back who was emptied out. They threw it to Edelman on the juke route, and they threw it down the seam to Gronk, who got it down to the 2, and they finished the drive and won the Super Bowl. So literally that's where we got this thing from. So to me, what this does, and I think there's an overarching mindset to me when it comes to the juke stuff and to the option routes. And once you really pull apart the quarters match coverage, one of the things that I like to think about is once you learn the rules like a pro, you can break them like an artist. And what that means to me is that's a Pablo Picasso quote. And what it means is understanding how these guys are going to match. So if you imagine you're in a 3-by-2 empty, or 3 receivers are on the right, and we are going to go hitches on the outside, we're going to go inside fades at number 2. Now what we're going to have is our juke route with number 3. And if you play it out versus match quarters, you're going to get everything, unless they drop a defensive end, to drain out of there except the Mike linebacker. And unless you're playing somebody freaky, I'm sure there's some people like that in Georgia and Texas, but the Mike linebacker don't want to cover. That's not what he does. It's a box player. And so what you're able to do is you're able to match people up on that. And so what I love about it is, and the reason we started there and the reason I think anybody can apply this is the progression for the quarterback is this simple, in my opinion. It is a 2 high, 1 high answer, right? And the way I teach our guys is, hey, if this is too high, we're going to get everything we want. We just got to make sure those apex players drop out of there. Unless you have a soft corner and apex is a little tight, you might steal a hitch. But if not, let them drain out. Our guy's going to go to work, and then as soon as he breaks leverage, we're going to throw it to him. If this thing pre-snap or post-snap rolls to 1 high, you got answers already. You got hitches for cover 3. You got 2 inside fades for cover 1. You hold the post safety, move them or hold them where you want and take your matchup. And literally in that Patriots Super Bowl, that's what they did. They threw a hitch, they threw the juke, and the Rams changed their coverages, but it has answers in it that shouldn't overload anybody because those are all things that all of us at every level do. We already throw inside fades versus 1. We throw hitches versus off cover 3. And maybe we don't run a juke route, but we're isolating mics. People do it in 7-on-7s. They do it all the time. They drain everything out and they say, hey, just go get open off the mic. That's what this is. And to me, where we really nailed this thing down with the juke route is what we wanted to do is we wanted it to have enough tempo to let the coverage drain, but also be quick enough to attack the mic. So our whole thought process is we want to try to attack the inside shoulder of this mic. And the reason we want to do that is it's going to take some time to allow those apex defenders to block out of there. And I think one of the overarching themes to me, and you'll probably get this as much as anyone is, there will be times on our film where we'll take free space and it looks like a stick route. If it's that free, great. But with match coverage, what we want to do is we want to take a linebacker and disallow them from being able to stay on a similar lateral plane. We want to move them and shake them. And what the squaring up this mic does is it's going to freeze his feet. We're giving a 1-2, maybe it's head and shoulders, and then we're running away from him, whether it's inside or it's outside. And I think what that does is it accomplishes everything. It puts the mic in a tremendous pressure, but allows the umbrella of the coverage to leave. They'll all be outside the hashes. You have hash to hash to win on the worst cover guy that stands up on a defense. So to me, it's just, and I'm looking at these numbers, I like to do this so people don't think I'm just making this up. Over the last 2 seasons, we're 81% completion on it, and we're 86 adjusted efficiency, which to me, adjusted efficiency is when we go back and we grade our film, we look at concepts, obviously completion's completion, but we want to know, are we getting our guys open? So an adjusted efficiency is the concept from a play caller's perspective, open. We might miss the throw. The route might be poor. It might be a drop, and we'll notate that. But adjusted efficiency means we're getting people open, which at the end of the day is the name of the game of a play designer and play caller. And at 86%, I mean, that's perimeter screen efficiency.
Right.
So that's what I think. I mean, I just think it's a great one. If you're not in this world at all, Hosswide Juke, there's so many just great clips on YouTube. Bill O'Brien's coaching it up on a clinic. There's a 7-minute clinic that you can hear it and see it. But I think it's almost a fail safe because it's insulated properly with routes that we all throw. And you're going to be working off of the worst cover guy.
Right. So good. So good. So on the juke, you're squaring up the mic. Do you prefer or do you care? Like, say he breaks back outside. So he's to the field. He breaks back outside. Do you prefer him to sort of break out like it's an out route or to pivot back outside? Or do you have a preference or do you care at all?
It's a great question. Done them both. Honestly, we go player by player on that, which is a lot of our offense. So there may be some guys. I know the number one thing that we would do is if you imagine we're coming from the right, we're squaring them up, is our guys would hit right step, left step, the rocker. It's a crossover, and then they're running out like essentially an out route, if you will. Now, some of our bigger guys or even like hyper quick guys, it might look like a whip route. Like they're going to hit them like a little hezzy, and then they're hitting a slant, stick their foot in and run away. So I don't know that I have preference. I think the biggest thing is how quickly can you get out of the break? Because one of the only things that I've seen besides people putting extra hats in there to guard an option route that stops it is guys getting too cute in front of the linebacker, because at the end of the day, if you do it enough, they're going to hold you. So you can't go up to them and be stopped. Your feet can't stop. So however your guys can get out of it quicker, we've done them both. That would be my answer to that.
Yeah, that's good. So this is going to apply to several of the routes really that we talk about.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Quarterback wise, I'll just let you talk about quarterback drop or how this could be slightly different than a normal timing-based concept of what you do with a quarterback.
100%. So one thing you have to come to grips with that in a lot of passing concepts, we're on time and we're in sequence and all that. And I'm telling you, you got to be on time. But to me, at least these next two concepts we're going to talk about, including juke, it is a reactionary throw if we're throwing the juke. And that sounds, some people are like, I'm not going to do it. But to me, what it is, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, right? But when you watch him, to me, it's, if you teach a punch step, I'm a right-handed quarterback. I punch with my left. I rock with my right. What we teach our guys is we want balance in our drop. Okay. We want a sturdy base. And then basically what we tell them is we want our 6-inch lead step to throw it on the front side shoulder of wherever our guy breaks. And the reason it is a reactionary throw is if we dictate the route, it's no longer an option route. Both you and I and everybody listening can call a slant, can call an out, can call a whip. And those are all good. There's times for all that stuff, right? So what you have to do is you have to be reactionary to it. And I'll take it one step further. The way that we accomplish this is we have created a drill. And it's literally, we call it our option drill. And I want to give credit where credit's due. There is a young guy on the Mount St. Joseph staff that most of you listening will have not heard his name, and I'm telling you, you need to write this name down and remember it. Lane Little is a wide receivers coach at Mount St. Joseph. He created this drill where what we're doing is basically it's one coach, it's the quarterback, and it's the option runner. And basically what we're doing, whether it's looky or juke, we're giving the defender that we are optioning is the coach, and we can give all different leverages. Head up, outside, inside, jump outside, jump inside, match it, roll it down. We can do whatever we want. Whatever you start to see, you want to accommodate. And so what we'll do is we'll do a 3-prong progression. We will do a speed, 1-step, power win. Okay. And that's just traditional. Step, you want to go inside, step with the outside, run across his face, and vice versa to the out. Second prong in the progression is the rocker step that we just talked about. You got basketball kids, it's a crossover. If you're on the right side, you want to go inside, it's left, right, back in. Or right, left, back out. Okay. Third in the progression is what you'll start to see on some of the NFL tape is some form of a jerk route where we are setting a stick and using almost a double, 2.5, triple move to go back in or back out. That one we want to be our changeup, not our fastball, because there's a lot of volatility to that, but we practice it. And then what this does, going back to your question for the quarterback, is his job is based on juke or looky, he's either controlling, he's making sure the structure stays too high in juke, or when we get to looky, he's reading the mic, he punch, he rocks, he's in a balance set, right? He's got a square base, and as soon as his receiver breaks a leverage, he takes a 6-inch lead step to the front side shoulder, whether that's in, out, if for whatever reason they spot drop and we sit down, that's what we're doing, and that's how you teach the timing. You're teaching the route, the read, and the quarterback timing all in one drill. And if that stimulates your brain, hit up exactly who I just mentioned, Lane Little. He made up the drill. And this drill is fantastic. And that's why we're at 86% efficiency on this.
Yeah, that's so good. And the last thing about the juke, because we got so much more to talk about, but like we could go forever just on juke. We could do a whole episode. Like a lot of colleges, and we've done this too, are just basing when they're running hitch seam. They're just basing with the jerk route. And we've done that too. And there's good things. But the thing about the jerk, and you can get grabbed. There's a much better chance. And the way you guys are doing it, especially if you have smaller slot type guys, like I know a lot of high school guys have, you have that ability to not let that guy get hands on you and then quick twitch break across his face. That's what I love about your version, rather than just saying, hey, we're going to lock in the jerk. Having that as it's in the toolbox, but that's not our base way we're going to do it. Whereas it's a lot tougher if you're going to jerk every time, all of a sudden to say, well, this is not really working, we're getting grabbed. Now we got an option. Well, you haven't worked that as much. So I think that's one of the benefits of the way you guys are doing it.
And I'll say this, if you jerk from the start, your kids can outsmart themselves and jerk back into just poor leverage. Right. That's what happened to us. We wanted to be super cute and jerk the whole time and have this crazy shake route. And we did exactly what you said. Our efficiency went down. So that's how we went back and figured out that's a changeup. That's not our fastball.
We had a guy at the school I was at before that we're like, yeah, man, you're taking 3.5 seconds to run your jerk route. If we could just calm down and maybe get the ball out, since this is a quick game play for us. But I digress when it comes to that.
I've been there, brother.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at Fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
Let's go to Looky. Now, for a lot of you guys that don't know what we're talking about, and I'm going to let Coach go into it and explain, but if you're familiar with a lot of the slot option routes that are happening in the NFL, we're kind of hitting the holy trinity of option routes today. You've got juke routes, you've got look, which some people call slot looky. We call it sloppy, which is a slot option route. And then you have the option route that a lot of people call choice that we're going to get into with just some slight variations, but with choice where you're usually off some type of a smash that you're actually working this route. But we're talking looky now. So kind of how did this start for you? And we'll go into some detail about how to coach this thing up, because I know I probably get more questions about this one than any other option route. So we'll go pretty hardcore into this one. So I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think this is probably my favorite. I mean, obviously, juke is where we started. I think our kids might say juke, but what I like about looky is this started for me, another YouTube video, and go in and find it. It's Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Saints stick option. They have all their cuts from whatever year that was. Yeah. And I watched that 20 times just obsessing over what they were doing. They were running classic stick to a three-man side, and they're letting him go to work on the weak side linebacker. And I think LSU in 19 did it a ton. There's a whole nother deal there that you can find. And what I love about this is, even more so than juke, is to me, I'm a believer in quick game. And Coach, you could probably attest to this. I think quick game is not run enough over the spectrum of football right now. I think people have replaced quick game with RPOs, which I think is great, right? To me, that is a traditional application of quick game where we're controlling the linebackers. But I still think you need quick game, because what this became for us is on 3rd and 4 to 6, unless you're getting the green light to go for it every time, you got to throw it at some point, right? I mean, it's hard to run for 6 on 3rd down, right? So what I like about this is, if you imagine we're in a 2x2 set, and the one that we found the most squeeze out of this last year is we're going to run some type of a snag concept, right? But to us, everything whether it's a cousin, brother, third cousin, whatever it is, of stick, where we have somebody at vertical control, we have a stick zone, and we have someone as a flat control, that's stick to us. That's a stick family. So we need that on the front side, because if you imagine against a 4-2-5, the only way that they can get enough bodies over there, unless they roll a safety, is to push the mic. That's it. It's the only way they could do it, right? So we have that on the front side. Well, then on the backside, our two-man surface, we have some type of, vertical control. I prefer a post. I know the young guys at Mount St. Joe were getting on me maybe about a dig. You can MOR it. Whatever it is, we need the corner and the safety to drain, right? So now, if they match it out with the mic pushing to our three-man surface, we've created another isolation, which is the name of the game, right? Same thing in deep choice. You're creating an isolation. And what I love about it is, if you go from left to right, where our snag or stick or whatever starts, all the way back, it's a progression within a quick game concept, which I freaking love. I think that's so critical, because, quick game is out there in mirrored concepts, and I think there's validity to mirrored concepts. But your kids can guess wrong, and guess what? They're holding on to the ball, which is no bueno. We can't do that. So what I love about this is we have options at all 5 spots that solve some type of problem. And if they do what we want, as again, learning the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist, as soon as they match everything out, we've created the isolation and that's why we're talking about this. So I think a key to this is what I've been mentioning, is you have to insulate it with a front side concept that your kids will throw. Where our offense in this route took over last year, we've run it for 5 years, but it went to another level, is we started really throwing the front side concept. That is critical, because we can do this and hope they just match out people are going to wise up. They're going to give you different looks. They're going to, roll safeties down. They're going to drop that mic deep where it's not going to give you a clear push, and you've got to be able to throw the stick. You've got to be able to throw the back if you need it. If you get the advantage to the corner, you've got to be able to throw that over to the front side. So I think that that's a key, is take your best version of stick, snag, whatever it is in that vein, and start there. That's my advice. Whatever you're doing, the old school way that people would do this is, okay, we're going snag double slants. Here's my greatest pitch for option routes. Okay, snag double slants. That's great. It's awesome. What happens when they take away leverage on both of our slants and they match out the snag? Now what?
Exactly.
That's why I run option routes. When it's a time for a slant, I'm going to run a slant. When it's time for an out, we're going to run an out. And when we need to disengage from match coverage, we're going to disengage from match coverage. So again, we hold the pin last. That's the reason we run the option route, is I want to be able to take the leverage that is given to us no matter what they're doing. That's my ultimate goal with this stuff. So I think that, and again, on this one, over the last 2 years, 71% completion, 76% adjusted efficiency. So three-quarters of the time we're getting a completion on this, and that doesn't even include the front side efficiency that we are operating at a high level.
That's unbelievable stats. Unbelievable. So really, really good stuff on a play where you can get explosives, but you also have high percentage, which is what everybody. So you're running the lookie, you're in the slot to the boundary.
Yep.
What's our general coaching point of how we're going to run this route off of the near defender?
All right, so what we're going to do, and if you're running it traditionally where we're going quick game to the field, option to the boundary, here's the number one piece of advice, especially, and I'm sure you see it down there in Georgia. I see it in college all the time. The number one thing is against a base 4-2-5 is you're going to get an inside anchored will, right? If there's going to be a glowing look for your receiver to go, man, I can run a speed out right now. What I'm telling everybody on here is I'm trying to save you the heartache. Don't run a speed out without squaring up the defender, because what's going to happen is they're going to be playing some type of read two in the boundary, and somebody's going to get their head knocked off or getting picked. So again, go back to it. We've got to square this guy up. And people will say, well, what happens when he wants to wall us inside? He's not letting us go inside. This is what we tell him. Drag him to deep water. He's protecting the inside for a reason. So when he's protecting it, let's go inside to hold him in there to create more space back out. And if we go in versus a read two, the corner's more likely to lift to that 10-yard range because nothing's threatening the flat. So now we've created this space, and you can imagine it's almost like a whip route where we already know where we're going to end up, but we have to use the leverage of the defense. Again, break their rules. Bring it inside, make him think it's going across his face. He's going to fight like heck to turn his shoulders and not let you do it. Great. Now I'm going to stick my foot in the ground and use a quick guy to run right back out to that speed zone landmark, but to the speed out landmark, but the corner has lifted now. He's gone. So now I have space and there's freedom to catch and turn and get upfield. So I think that's the critical element to it. I will say with juke and lookie, if you can get across the face of the matching backer, that's where the explosives are. You can create punt return alleys. If they drain out the front side, safeties open up, and we can cross his face, there's times where your kid will catch and can crease right up the middle of the field. We call it a punt return alley. It is open, right? But sometimes they won't let us go in there. So that's, again, why we do it. We're going to take the leverage they give us, but drag the defender that's matching you to deep water. If he wants to protect outside, go outside to come back in. It's the classic how you run a slant. Set them up with a little stem to the outside and come back in. It's all the same principle, but I think that is a critical element of it to get the highest yield of efficiency you can.
Yeah, I watched the drag them to deep water coaching point. So I'd never heard that. I completely stole that. It's amazing. For those of you guys that don't know, if you're a Glacier Drive member, Coach has got a ton of videos going over his passing game. I've watched them all. They are phenomenal. But that was one of the first things watching your video on Lookie is that coaching point. What a great visual. I think it makes sense to kids. I think it's really good. A lot of the NFL teams will say slant till you can't, and then on some option routes, it's when in doubt, break out. You got all this stuff. Do you have anything you're telling the kids, or are you just saying win off the guy's leverage and either break across his face or break back out? Do you have like a preference, or it's a day one, dirt dumb day one, this is what we're going to teach the kids kind of coaching point?
It's a great question. I think if I was starting from scratch, I would implement whatever your preference is. Slant till you can't, I think, is a great coaching point. We probably started in that vein. Honestly, when we built up, where my brain kept going back to is if a kid was struggling with the decision-making process, we would probably put some of those parameters on them. But honestly, where we went, it's the same thing to me is like we would educate them on the structure of the defense and where the pocket's going to be. But what I tried not to do in deep choice or underneath option routes or when we talk about goof is I don't want to overcoach the decision. I want to coach the technique. So to me, if you pulled on one of the guys that played for me, he'd say, we got to square him up, step on his toes, shake him and win. That's what they'd say. They'd say, that's what we're going to do, whether it's in or out. I'd say most of the time it breaks out.
Yeah.
But it breaks in. You know what I mean? You'll see it on the clips. It'll break in. So, because I've done it before where I overcoached the decision and now they're robots. And now I might as well just call a slant or call an out. You know what I mean? Which are still good, like we talked about, but that's not what this stuff is.
You like the post with number one. Why? Talk to me about why you like the post.
So another big reason for all this option route stuff is the personnel, which I guarantee everybody on this listening has the little guy that you put him in the short shuttle and he can move, or he's a basketball kid that is just going to be too short to play at the next level. That's the guy for this. Somebody with the short area quickness, right? If they have feel, that's great, but the short area quickness. So when I first started doing this, we had 4 of those guys. We didn't have X's. We didn't have outside guys. So the MOR works, but basically, Coach, if we were going to throw this MOR, it was going to be like at a 20% clip, which to me is just like, I can't do it. Like, it's not, why are we doing that? So the post to us was going to achieve 2 things. We felt that it gave our kids a better chance to win at the top of the route. And we knew for a fact that it would drain a quarters, corner, and safety. We never wanted that safety in the fit. I could hear out an argument for the dig, which I know Sark and them are doing that off the goose stuff. I know you've seen it. That's got my intrigue. And the dig is probably something you could throw even at a higher clip than the post, but that's why we went to the post. It was personnel based, and we needed to make sure it achieved the objective that we needed it to, which was drain the coverage. But honestly, the way I see it is if they post snap roll on us, weak or strong, that post is going to hunt that seam that we can rip into. Right. And that's where my brain goes, is it has a direct purpose for an issue that the concept holds within it, that if that happens, we have an outlet there.
Yeah, that's really good. I know one of the things that guys will ask me on Twitter or whatever. So drop 8 wise, you're running this and you're getting drop 8.
Yes.
What are things that you've seen or issues you've had to kind of troubleshoot through this? If you're getting all of a sudden, okay, we're squaring up the overhang and we're getting the slant, but now there's an inside backer sitting in there because they've got the extra guy dropping.
I'm getting juiced because you already know the problems that exist. So when we get drop 8, and it's happened to us in the last 2 playoff appearances at Mount St. Joe. Most of the times in drop 8, it's going to have more of a spot drop element to it. So this is what we taught our kids, and we'll probably get to the goof next. We wanted to leave the mindset of this is match, and we've got to disengage from this guy to find and hunt space in between those 2 backers. If you go inside, you just said it, it's probably going to be there's someone else in there. So what we want to do is however you do it, whether you got to kind of carve out the space or you can just go take the first void underneath, we want this to have more of a read element to it than what you and I would declare an option route, if that makes sense. And it sounds like, well, now you're adding rules to it. Our kids understand it because what we'll do is we'll just play a clip of drop 8. We'll pause it at the top and we'll show them the inside's gone. Inside's gone, but look at this void in between, this overhang and this inside backer. This overhang's pushing to the flat. This overhang's dropping to this hook up right underneath there for 4 yards. We'll deal it to you. We might get tackled for 4.5, 5, but we're okay with that. We're still gaining efficiency. We're attacking space that they've given us.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I know watching 2019 LSU, and they saw drop 8 once they are obliterating everybody, and we would watch and try and figure out, okay, well, why is he doing this? I think sometimes you just had 2 all-pro wide receivers that are doing whatever they wanted, but watching them operating its drop 8 and not even care and just continue to throw it was pretty eye-opening. But that's really good coaching point. Okay, let's jump into goof now, which is kind of the third member of all this. So I think the way that you do it is slightly different than what you're seeing a lot of the NFL teams do it, but I know I've seen some of your stats that your efficiency on this is unbelievable, and it's just a really cool, unique thing that I think maybe even for guys that are still sort of like, I don't know about this stuff, I think goof is kind of an entry-level thing for a lot of guys guys where they can be like, okay, this is not that hard. Multiple kids can do this. So talk us through the goof concept, kind of how it just came about, and then we'll try and coach it up for the listeners.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. If the other two, I can understand where like the technique and stuff might put, some type of separation there. Goof, I think everybody should run. I do. And again, I think this is your specialty. That's why we did 2 hours on this thing last year. But to me, what goof is, to boil it down, it's a smash read. That's what it is to me. So basically, if you can imagine, and I like it out of condensed to soften up the coverage, but we got a 2-man surface. We've got a will, a corner, and a safety. What we're going to do is, instead of isolating somebody, we're going to read space. We're going to read the match of the defense, their areas that they're dropping to, and take the freest space. So you can imagine in a condensed set, our vertical guy's always on the corner. He's always on the corner, and what we tell him is you have to control and beat the safety. That's your responsibility. It's not the quarterback's, that's your responsibility. The quarterback's responsible for the corner. This is smash. We don't want to overload him. He's responsible for the high-low read. The goof runner, which I agree, almost everybody can do this. I bet everybody in our program at Mount St. Joe did this. Is his job is, let's say we get this corner out and they want to bracket it with the corner, the safety, and all that's left is the apex. We're going to do what traditional condensed smash is. We're going to run our speed out. We love our speed out. 4-step speed out. We're dealing it to them on the upfield shoulder. We're getting our 6 yards. Thank you very much. Okay, now to your credit, I use this coaching point. We have an LOL, low outside looking corner, that's hanging in that mid zone at 6 yards, but he's looking back at this goof runner that he's going to drive down on if you go to the flat. Well, our number one objective now is we're going to hook up in between the apex and the corner, show our hands and eyes back to the quarterback, and one of two things are going to happen. We're either going to deal it to you and we're going to catch a knife and penetrate the defense for 6 yards, or it's going to track down the corner and the will and allow us to now throw the corner on the smash, because at the end of the day, it's still smash, right? The other thing that we've done with it is, if we got any type of blitz from that apex player, or a really high, like he's trying to wall the seam of the corner route, we're going to replace inside almost like a snag route. It might look like a slant or a snag, but what we tell our guys on that is you have to call hot if you do that. And the reason for me to do that is to protect the quarterback, because he's reading smash. He's not reading snag. So the receiver is responsible for that. So if you can now go back and visualize what this is, it can be traditional smash with the speed out. It can be almost stick, if you will, right? Or it could be a snag concept. The flat control is the read of this goof runner. The only thing that I've found that puts stress on this, that I think turns it into the NFL version, is if pre-snap the apex is lined up over top of your receiver, or they stack check you to top hat, where now the guy that we're reading space, and now all of a sudden it's like there's a guy matching me. So take the inverse of what we just talked about from looky versus drop 8, right? Inverse that. Okay, we're space reading, and now all of a sudden there's a match. If we get matched, it turns into an option route. And that, to me, is what the NFL is really doing, where they're expecting somebody to be waiting there. Here comes Cooper Kupp. He right, left, runs across their face, in or out based on the free space. But I think that it sounds like a lot, but really it's just taking the freest space in essentially the flat that's available to you. And what makes it, to me, even more wholesale available is it's a great front side concept for all the back sides. Wide cross, double post. We like the benders and stuff, or whatever that is that you book read across the formation. This is your front side. Calling a 1st and 10. If we get 6, we're all happy, right? If they push the defense, we're working back to wide cross, right? Cross to post curl to back out if you want them. So to me, I agree with you. I think if you're starting somewhere, goof is the one, because most all of us have a high-low that we read on the front side. Yeah. Like, this is the best version of it. And if you ask our kids at the Mount, you ask them to call a play, what one play are you calling right now? They're saying some version of goof cross. That's where they're going with it, 100%, because they know they have answers for pretty much everything, no doubt.
Yeah, it's a good one. Was it strictly a boundary play for you, or did you guys run it to the field too?
All right. Awesome question. So go back to the guy that coached Lane Little, Mount St. Joe. If you don't know, you got to hit him up. Follow him, hit him up. 2 springs ago, I was all boundary, and we were good at it, right? But it can get compressed pretty quickly. And then it turns into the front side of wide cross, where you're just running a traditional fade flat. And it's like, we just wanted to match it, and then we'll go to the cross. Well, we wanted to throw the goof. So he's like, Coach, why don't we run it to the field? I'm like, There's no rule saying we can't. Let's do it. And I'm telling you, that's the number one adjustment that was made over the last 2 seasons for us is we started running it to the field, and the space that we've created to the field is incredible. The speed out's going to be open every time. They're not going to run trap 2 to the field. And if they do, we're running benders across, like we're getting in the middle of the field, right? And then what also happens is you take this mindset of the Y cross, they're more likely to play that 2 to the boundary, which is going to widen the safety to the boundary. It's going to tuck the field safety in. So we've got smash leverage to the field. We've got inside leverage from the boundary. And now to me, it's like you're reverse engineering these 2 concepts. But honestly, it makes it cleaner for the leverages that we're looking for. And so that, to me, if that's the number one adjustment we made, right? We put your LOL in last summer going into last year. And then that mindset of processing that, and then we flipped it to the field, that it became even greater than what it already was. So that is a great question, but that to me is a game changer.
Yeah. For you guys that are listening that have, sometimes we're just using this terminology, I know, and throwing it at some of you. So I've traditionally called goofy. Coach calls it goof. The Patriots, who kind of made this famous, called it goof in their gigantic system that they had kind of in the Brady years. And so that's kind of where that term comes from. But you'll see a lot of guys on Twitter call it choice, and you'll see all the different things. This is just a variation of that. But I absolutely love it. I will co-sign everything you just said. It's a phenomenal pattern. And one quick thing that you just brought out, like if you're running the corner route from number 1 to the field, the safety is not going to be outside number 1. You are going to clean up the read and define it for the quarterback, because that's just not the way defenses line up, because it's suicidal. They wouldn't. Yeah. But this is so good. I've got pages. We got to hit a couple more things. I got to be. Coach has got recruiting and all kinds of things. He's a busy college coach. We're going to have to get him off. We got a couple things. So everybody on here, if they're still a skeptic about all of the option route stuff we've been talking and kind of this deep dive, you have something. Every high school in America runs fade flat. Everyone does. And a lot of people, I've heard, Coach told me the other day, and this kind of made me, I was like, I got to get Caleb to talk about this, because you said fade flat is dead. Why would I run fade flat when every single defense in America is running read 2, and it's the very first pass that they install on the very first day? Kind of how traditional smash a lot of people feel. But you've got a way of running fade flat that has made it to a new thing and kind of juiced up the concept, and I love it. I think it makes it really easy, and it's very just clean for quarterbacks. So it's sort of a snack or snug formation, stack release, fade flat. Talk about that real quick, because I think everybody can use this. It's an amazing pass play.
I'll hit this one quick, but I love this one. So to echo what Coach is saying, over the last 2 seasons, 87% completion, 93.5% adjusted. I mean, it's like, come on now, right? Nuts. So we're cutting this split, and this is what this thing does. So let's go through the concept real quick. We got 2 guys condensed in. Our number 1 receiver still has to hit the landmark of the MOR. So what we're going to do is what I call spray in the release at the outside shoulder of the corner, right? So it's got an angle to it, and we're still MORing to get into that void, all right? And then what we're going to do with our number 2 is we're going to step into what I call vapor trail, so right behind that receiver, and we're going to follow him and duck out of 5, okay? That's how we coach it. And what this does, all right, is the condensed, all right, aspect of this. It creates the space and leverage that we desire. It softens up the corner, all right? And there was a Wall Street Journal article that came out this winter all about this condensed split stuff. And the number one thing that I took away from it is when you bring that condensed split in, we are dragging the corner inside and turning him into spatially a safety. He doesn't have this sideline to protect himself anymore, which is all this read 2, and you run this MOR, you get jammy out of bounds. So now he's got all of the space in, out, vertical, underneath that he is not used to playing in this landmark. So what this does is it not only displaces the corner, but it puts immediate stress on him, which is going to give your quarterback a clearer indicator. And most of the time, because this thing is vapor trailed and being sprayed, it looks like switch verticals. It looks like post wheel. It looks like it's coming at you. And so once we get that clearer indicator, it's going to create an easier read for the corner, where we're doing the same thing we would do in the previous concept. It's just a high-low. It's fade flat. It's a front side. It's a cousin of smash, right? And if he lifts, we're going to throw it. I'll tell you this. I did a deep dive study because I don't even understand how this efficiency is real. But the only way to guard it They can trap it, but the throw to me is easier on this hole shot because of the angles that we're taking. It's not as steep for the quarterbacks, so it helps at all levels. But what happens is if they want to lift the corner, the only way to guard it is the apex defender has to 7-on-7 drop. And what I mean by that is open his hips and run full speed right now. If he does not do that and the corner lifts, you are getting the speed out every single time. And then let's just say, great, they've seen it all the time and they guard it, which you can see by these numbers, it doesn't happen a lot. Well, Y cross is coming in right behind it. They're 3/2, stressed out. Here comes in something in that void. So again, just like goof, it's a front side read where we want to take free access as many times as we can, but it builds in. So if you have goof in this fade flat version, you've got two front side concepts that will actually get open on your white cross now instead of just using it as something to get matched. So I don't know. We tripped on this, Coach, to be honest with you. I don't know how we did it. You saw the video. It's ridiculous. And it's so inexpensive to teach. It's fade flat from a condensed with a vapor trail, and it's clean. We got videos on it. If you hear this and they're like, Coach, you want, just get at me and I'll send you the cuts.
Yeah, great stuff. So easy, simple. You're taking an everyday concept and finding new uses for it. I mean, that's what adapting as a coach is. It's so good. Okay, 2 quick questions and we'll get you off here. So you're a college coach. A lot of the guys that listen to this are high school coaches. A lot of them are quarterback coaches. Something I'm always interested in when I talk to college guys is what could a high school coach have done a better job at with guys that you're watching, you're recruiting, you're signing, whatever, that in coaching. So you get a kid and you're like, man, I really wish he had this skill or he was developed in this way before he got to me. It would have saved me time or would have made things easier. So for you as a college quarterback coach, like, what do you think are things that you would like to see high school coaches focus more on?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us that are listening to this are probably operating in this world. I absolutely know you do, but I don't think that happens enough. So number one for me is all this stuff you can hear. It's progression. It's pocket-based. It's throwing in rhythm within the pocket and tying our footwork to the progressions. Every high school huddle tape I watch, the kids can throw the vertical. I could throw a fade. I have the worst arm in America. I could throw a fade, drop it in the bucket, right? But to me, you want playmakers. You want guys that can operate outside the pocket. You want guys that can throw it vertical on the first read. But to me, a lost art in football right now as a collective is being able to go through these simple progressions inside the pocket where our footwork is tied to the progression and these kids can work. I'm not saying they got to get back to their fourth progression all the time. That we all know that's difficult, but can they go from 1 to 2 to 3 and take it from just a quick game concept and move it while operating the pocket, right? And a lot of kids, I'll rate a kid higher that has balanced footwork where his feet, you can see his feet, eyes, and hips working the progression in sequence. They're all tied together over a kid that's running all over the place and he's creating all these plays because I know he can get the football out and work within the pocket. And again, you don't have to drop back 100 times a game to accomplish this, but you have to be able to work inside the pocket and tie your feet into that. And I think I would just piggyback that with teaching the deeper why within the concepts, the intentions of the operation is what took our offense at Mount St. Joe from being pretty good to really good, right? And it took me 7 years to understand. That's why I was on that call with you last year, but like truly understanding why we're running this, how it's effective, going through it like we're doing right now, like what are the scenarios that could occur in this and working through them on the front end. So now our kids, as they work through the progression, they understand the answers and they're not going one read, oh, that's guarded, I'm taking off and running. Because bet it happens in Georgia, in Texas, and in these big boy states in college. If you're taking off running, you're going to get hurt. It's just going to happen. It doesn't matter how good or big or whatever. So to me, that's one thing that if I see a kid that can do that with his feet, eyes, and hips and work through a progression and teach me, for example, fade flat, Y cross, and tell me why they do it and what each part of that concept is for, it's going to have higher value than somebody that's just running circles and creating all these plays down the field outside the pocket. I'm not saying that's not important, but the best teams, they throw from the pocket. You know what I mean? They just do.
Right. That's translatable, no doubt. You see 100%. A kid do that in high school, you're like, that's the world you live in college. So I think that's great points. Great points. So last question, I'll get you out of here. I cannot tell you how good this has been. So you're an OC, you're a play caller, you got all the pressure of game day. So what is your pregame routine? And we're going to ask this of every guest this year's kind of every guest gets the same question. But what is your pregame routine as you're getting ready for a game? And you can go as much into this as you want to. You can go all day, or you can be, this is the hour before the game. What kind of gets you ready to go on game day?
So a couple things that come right to mind. I love rock and roll. I used to listen to the heaviest rock I could get on the speaker. I heard from someone they were like, hey, you should try classical music. Now, I'm not saying I listen to classical music, but my point of this is I listen to something that's going to bring my heart rate down, something chill. And usually what I go to is the summer playlist. Like it could be snowing out and I'm on the beach, right? And what I'm doing while I'm doing this, whether it's in my AirPods or in my home office, the office at the school, is I'm writing out my play sheet. We could do a whole nother, one of these later, but my play sheet's handwritten. I'm old school. And I'm going through, and what I'm doing is I'm reprocessing the week's work of this game plan in the call sheet, writing it out to take it from the pen to paper back to my brain. So just write, and that's what I just sit there, listen to my music. I'm on the beach, and I'm writing out my plays on formations, my third downs, my calls. Okay, here's my tricks, and I'm just in there by myself. And I think that one of the things that I think is funny about how I operate pregame wise is, how everybody – your kids go out and they throw their routes on air before, right? I do not want to be out there whatsoever. And that might sound selfish, but the reason why, Coach, is I see one drop or one missed throw and I'm like, oh, we're not going to complete any passes today. I got to scratch it. So I saved my players and my assistants all the heartache and just said, I'm going to stay inside. You guys get them ready. Keep them loose. I'm going to go get myself loose. I'm going to sit here in a Zen type of environment, write out my call sheet, and I'll meet you guys on the field for the pregame handoff drills that you do. Your 3 plays of 7 on your 3 plays a team, and then we'll go in and come ready to get back out. So it has been a big one for me because a lot of it when I was younger was emotional and trying to get jacked up, and you're giving this pregame speech. None of that stuff matters. Like, it's great. But, it don't matter. We got to go execute. I got called plays that put our kids in the best position possible. So I want to be in a state of zen and make sure that our kids are comfortable. I'm getting myself mentally comfortable to go call a football game, because calling a football game it's not about getting jacked up and screaming. It's a mental game. That's what it is, right? That's why people go up in the box. So I think that's one. And then, the last thing I'll do before we go out there, I know this was one of the questions on the previous year's iterations of this deal, is I'm going to go in, I'm going to drink a rain, right? I'm going to drink a white gummy bear rain, and I'm going to get ready to go. It gets my brain cooking, and then we're out on the field, and we're going to try to get first downs and get touchdowns, come to the sideline and do it again and again and again. And that's the general outline of this pregame routine that gets me right.
That's good. Really good stuff. Coach, you absolutely crushed it. I've got 3 or 4 pages of notes and I haven't even listened to it. I'm trying to ask questions. So I'm sure I'll get more as I go back through. This is going to really help people out. Thank you for promoting option routes, which is one of my passions that I try to convince people and proselytize and let them know that you can do this. And I'm constantly told you can't. So
all the time.
It's good to hear from a guy who's got it figured out, is working it. Coach, you're elite. I'm looking forward to watching your career. Your ceiling is sky high. So you guys kill it this year at St. Thomas, and let's keep in touch, and really appreciate you being on.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Josh, as I said, very impressive here with Caleb. He never fails to disappoint, whether it's been on a clinic or a podcast. I think he's always dropping some great knowledge. But for you, what were the takeaways from this one?
Well, I think the first thing is that in any coach, it doesn't matter what system, if you don't pass the ball at all, any coach can learn from this. And it's Caleb's willingness to learn and try and improve. If there's anybody that could kind of rest on their laurels and say, I've kind of got this figured out. If you look at his point totals over the last few years, he'd be the guy. But he doesn't do that at all. He's constantly searching and talking to guys and trying to find what the next great offensive idea is. I just really respect that, and I think it's amazing. So that's definitely one of my first takeaways. I think second, I have always been a big option route guy. You know that. We've talked about it for years. Caleb is super into that, and I know that's kind of what the episode's about. But the freedom, I think that guys can take from this, the freedom to let kids make choices and to make decisions on the run. I love what Caleb said about if you learn the rules like a pro. He had the Picasso quote, if you learn the rules like a pro, you can break them like an artist. What a cool quote about being able to take stuff that you learn within the system and then sort of express as a player in a different way maybe than somebody would have thought before. I think that's a really cool idea. A lot of coaches can take things from that. You can give kids freedom. As long as it's educated freedom, they can do a lot of stuff. And I think the third thing is that he said, which is something that I've kind of advocated for a while, but I think that there's still a role for quick game in the modern passing game. And Caleb talked about, we're all going to have RPOs. That's going to be a heavy part of what we do in modern football, but there's also still a need for quick game, I think, in a lot of programs. And I think so many coaches have gotten away from that. I think having that as another option for your quarterback where you can define where you want the ball to go and pre-snap and post-snap and not have to worry about having things you want to do taken away from you by your read in the RPO game. So I think that still having quick game, that's a super important thing that I think is coming back around a little bit, but I wish more coaches would listen to his point on that.
Yeah, as I said, a great kickoff here to Season 2 of the Passing Lab. I'm excited for the guests you're bringing to us here this summer and look forward to our next one here.
Super excited, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. As I mentioned in the introduction, we'll be taking a series-based approach to the podcast in 2025, bringing you a network of coaches sharing their insight and perspective on the game. We've kicked off the sprint-based football series presented by Titan Sensors with host Tony Holler already, and you'll hear from Coach Holler every 2 weeks this year. We'll be kicking off our Think Tank series presented by Modern Football Technology in January. These will be roundtable discussions with coaches on offense, defense, and special teams topics. Our Champion series presented by Signature Championship Rings will also be back as a year-long series in 2025. This will also be in a roundtable format with 3 state champions discussing various topics and sharing insight on what's helped their program reach a state championship caliber. Lastly, we want to hear from you, and we'll have opportunities for you to contribute in our Your Call segments throughout the year. We want you to be part of the podcast in 2025. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.